All right, we're back. We just finished installing Bower. It's COMP125, and it's the summer 2016 semester of client-side web development. And it's week 5, part 2 of our broadcast. We're going to talk about web fonts a little bit and how to install those in our project, right? And then we're going to get to the meat and bones of what we're really doing this week, next day. Let's take a look at how this works. So I want to go to Google Fonts. Let's use Google Fonts as a web font. There's other ones out there too. For example, there's Typekit. We can always use one of those. But let's, for now, instead of using Adobe products, let's use the free Google stuff. So I'll say Google. By the way, there's a free version of if I go fonts, right? Google/fonts. Okay, let's try that again. Google Fonts. How about that? And I want to go to Google.com fonts, not Google.ca fonts. Notice that I get, this is Google Fonts, again, hosts, listen to my words here, hosts a font service, right? So we're using our service to use our fonts as opposed to have our own fonts locally. We're going to get to hosted services later on in this course, right? When we use some services from Google. One of the things I want to do with you in this course is create a little interactive map. Maybe we can do that this week. We'll use Google Maps, and we'll get our local position wherever we are on the map, and we'll put it on our contact page. Let's see how it works, all right? It's not that difficult to use. But if you look at this thing, I want you to get this, to complete your lab, I want you to use Open Sans, actually, which is this font that we're using here. Open Sans is a very popular font that a lot of people use, and they use Google Fonts to get it, all right? So I click Add to Collection. By the way, all the instructions for this are on your lab details up on eCentennial, right? And then on the bottom, I want to use this on the right here, this use option. It's going to take you here. And I want you to click normal and bold, right? Just in case we need to bold things, bold. You can also choose other ones, but those are the two I want. I want you to skip section 2, so don't choose any other character set here, like Vietnamese or Greek. And then go to number 3. Notice there's a couple ways you can install it, like this. You can use a link to connect to Google, right? I want you to do it the @import way here, right? @import, not the JavaScript way, actually. @import. @import takes the URL from Google and installs the font called Open Sans. Let's take this and put this inside your CSS file at the top. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my project. So let's go to my project here. Here's Visual Studio Code. I'm going to go to my app.css that I have under content. And here at the top, here's my first sentence. Before my first sentence or anything else, I want to put this @import, right, that I just got from Google. This is completing the second part of your lab. All right? Okay, this is part 1. Part 2 of Google Fonts, right? I need to do this piece. So somewhere in here, I need to put in some kind of font family, Open Sans, and sans serif. So where would I put that, right? I want to grab this link here, and I want to put this in my body tag. So my entire body tag, every font will inherit from body because it's the top node, right? So I'm going to go back in there, right, into my Visual Studio Code. And at the top, I'm going to create a new body tag that I'm going to override the other one. So I'm going to say body. And I'm going to paste font family Open Sans. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm importing the font here. I'm declaring it here. And I can use it anywhere I want. Like, for example, if I want to use, for my H1 tag, if I want to declare my H1 tags, all my H tags use font family Open Sans, I can do that. Let's see what immediately I get for my local files and see how they work. Now, I'm going to run my local server here with HTTP server. I'm going to do this every time here on in. So if you don't have NPM running, you won't be able to do what I do, right? So I need to kind of teleport to the right location. So I'm going to go right here, open in terminal or command prompt, right? And I need to do HTTP server from inside my project folder. Okay, there we are. Now I'm going to go to localhost, right? And refresh. And if I did everything correctly, my fonts here will look different. How do you tell? Because it looks very similar. It's a sans serif font, right? Well, one thing you notice, did you notice any change with this or with this, right? Well, may or may not show the change because if I right-click and if I go to inspect, take a look at the console. It says failed to load resource server with a status of 404. This is some problems I got. Scripts, COMP125, scripts, lib, font, awesome, fonts. I made a mistake. This is a problem. Look. See this? Failed to find the fonts. And I got two of them, the WAF2 and this one. Guys and girls, please leave this alone. This is not an error on your part. This is what happens when Font Awesome is pointing to fonts that don't exist anymore inside their fonts folder. Leave it alone. If I refresh this thing, notice even if it doesn't go away, it's not killing anything. My fonts, my icons are still there for Font Awesome, right? All right, one thing to note though is if I go to hit sources for a second, and to test this, that this is working, I want to check out my app.css to make sure that I have it. Notice that it's not there. Why? Well, either there's two possibilities. One, right, my app.css didn't get updated, right? Or is it even in my fonts? Did I even include it in my index.html? Did I miss it somehow? Content, it's in my content app.css. Or do I need to recharge my server or restart my system? Notice that, hey, nothing's happening here. So where did I get that information from? How come I didn't get a response? Yes, I am. So I'm saying things to note, no changes, right? Let's look at my local server by going localhost. Okay, now, do we see a change? By the way, console, no errors, right? Do I see a change here? And how do I know that there's a change? Well, again, if I go to sources, if I go to scripts, sorry, content, if I go to app.css, hey, how come my app.css is still not showing everything, right? There it is. One thing to note is this. When you want to trace what's happening with your elements, notice on the right-hand side here, when you do your debugging, this is back from last week, we can see that as I skip through, if I want to look at an element, right? So if I go into my body, and if I look inside my div tag in my container, and if I look inside my h1 tag, and if I click onto it, on the right, it's going to show my font family. And it says inherits, which is good. Notice that my font is actually not weighted as heavy because I'm using Open Sans, right? And same thing with over here. Notice the difference. If I was to actually look at Azure, let me look at Azure for a second because I can look at it side by side for you. So remember that we have our Azure link here, right? I haven't updated Azure yet. So see how dark this is here, right? And now look at this one. Take a look. Do you see a difference between the two? Right? So the font family's changed, right? And I've done that by using a web font. A lot of people think that the two fonts that are really popular out there, Helvetica Neue, which is a very popular font on there, and Open Sans, they're two very, very popular fonts that are being used everywhere, right? So why? Because they're very legible. You can view them. They look nice on the web, and they're nice and light, so they don't look as heavy. So please update your project with Open Sans for Lab 3 to get full marks. Now that you've done this, you've done everything you need up until now. So, you know, it took us a little bit of time, but you've got everything you need for Lab 3. Right? If you just hand in your project as is, nothing else, just something that says this, working with DOM, blah, blah, blah. No changes, just this, and it looks like there's Open Sans and everything else, we're good to go. Let me upload my everything to GitHub so you can compare my stuff with yours. Okay, so here it is. I got this one change. App.css, this is what changed. I'm going to stage everything. I'm going to kind of go in here and say added Open Sans Google font. Right? That's what I did. Save this, go here and push. And now my project is going to be pushed out to Azure. And then if everything goes well, Azure is going to update. Okay, let's see if Azure updates. So again, the way to check this is to look at deployments for Azure. It takes a second to deploy. I can also sync, or sorry, maybe refresh would be the right way to do it. Syncing is not a good practice because it might do something that you don't want to do. And if everything, you notice it did deploy. Here's my check mark over here on the right. And if I was to check out Azure, so here's Azure before, here's me. Let's just refresh Azure and see what I get. Azure after. See how I changed the font to this. Let's take a look at the errors. Do we still get the errors? We should. should still get the errors that we normally got on the console for Font Awesome, because this is local errors with my WAF files. By the way, how do I fix? Did anyone find the fix on Azure to fix this? It's actually a fix for this, and it's not what you think. It's not because the files aren't there. It's because WAF files are a security issue, right? I'll come back to that maybe next day, because we want to talk about some other stuff today. Okay. Web fonts and Bower is what we covered so far. Yes?
So if we are getting these kind of errors in the assignment.
This is okay for this kind of errors, but it can't be other errors. It can't be like your own personal stuff not working, like, you know, images not functioning properly, all that kind of stuff. That's bad. That's something different. This is an error to Azure. It's not an error to what you're doing. We're going to fix this. It's not something that's not fixable. It's totally fixable. All right. PowerPoint. So what we're talking about here is working with a DOM. And so far what we've talked about is how to connect with the DOM. And we've been using, by the way, the BOM is the browser object model. So the two, right? So the browser, what's the difference between a browser, the DOM, and the screen? Those are things we were going to talk about before. Well, the browser uses something called a window object, right? So let me go back. So if I go back to my project, let's go to, just to start this off for today, and then we'll finish it off next day. Let's go to app.js, right? And in here where we have all our project stuff, let's kill it all. So we're going to make a brand new project. This is lesson 5, right? So we're going to kill all this up underneath the strict, right? And we're going to save. And we're going to make this so it says, here's my student ID, blah, blah, blah. And this is not my website anymore because it's not lesson 4. It's probably going to be lesson 5, my guess. Probably is. And it's not June 1st today, right? Although it'd be nice if it still was. It's June 6th, so we have less time. One thing to note is I want to access the window, right? So if I do a console log, here's just a console log here, and I'm going to type in the word window, right? Let's see what I get. What's the difference between window and document and screen? Those are the 3 new things you're going to learn. So window, document, and screen. So here's my document before that. Let's see if anyone can answer that question. So what's the difference between document, window, and screen? Glenn, what do you think the difference is between document, window, and screen? Take a guess. Don't worry about it. Even if you're wrong, it's okay. Right? What's a document and what's a window? Think about the JavaScript stuff. Go ahead, take a pop. How about document? We've done document a lot. What's the document? The HTML document. It refers to our HTML document, whether it's index.html or whatever we call it. It's all of the documents that are inside of our project, right? Documents mean all the files, the HTML files that are on our project. Okay. What about window? What would that be? So there's window and document. What the hell is window? Right? Window is actually the browser itself, the browser window. Not the document. It's actually the application, the browser we're running, Chrome or Firefox or whatever. We have access to that. We have access to everything that the browser is, right? And then screen is the other one. And what's screen, right? Screen is our actual screen for a computer, right? The resolution and everything else that is our computer. So document, window, and screen has everything we have that makes up our entire viewing experience as a user. Right? We have access to all these different things. We create stuff for the web. I can influence our website depending on who's using it, what kind of browsers coming inbound, and what kind of screen resolution they have. I can do all that stuff. I can make conditional statements to adjust my website to that, so it'll look different. An example of that is my viewport. Right? This is my viewport for my phone. My screen size is going to be different than the screen size on my desktop, right? And depending on the size of my screen, put your hands again, boom, a note. When I get depending on what I get on my screen, it'll affect the layout and the flow of my content from my website, right? Okay, so let's print this out and see what we get. So we'll say save. Now remember, we've changed our our server and our code. Now down here, because we've been launching the server, I'm going to kind of stop the server and relaunch because I've changed my code. Whenever I change my JavaScript, in order for my changes to take effect 100%, right, we want to refresh. This is going to be all gone. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at my inner inspect. Let's see what I get under my console. So one is document. Here's my document. And it gives me an object of my entire document. This is what it is. So I can actually look through here and look through the head or my body. I can actually look through my entire document. This is my entire index.html. That's what it's returning. Okay, that's my document. Lots of power, which means I have access to everything that's inside my document through JavaScript. Same thing with my window. Here's my window. Take a look at all the stuff from my browser. This is all the stuff coming from my browser. It'll tell me what browser it is. If I scroll down enough, it'll tell me, you know, what's the manufacturer, what's the version, everything will be in here. This is for my browser, my browser itself. Lots and lots of stuff I have access to. This is the window object, and everything underneath it are methods and properties that I have access to. Here's the next one. Here's a screen. Look, my available height is 946. My available left is 0, because look, there's nothing left on the screen itself, right? My available top is 23. I have some space. There's 23 pixels here on the top, right? It says my available width is 1280, right? And my color depth is 24. So it means like I have 24-bit color on right now, right? My height is 1024. So my height for my entire screen is 1024 by 1280, right? Pixel depth. And here's my width, 1280. Here's my orientation, screen orientation. If I was to put this on my phone, and it says type as landscape, I can actually see what my orientation is. When I make an orientation change, it's an event. If I go from here to here, an event gets triggered. And depending on when my event happens, when I change my orientation, I can change my layout. That's how responsive design works, right? Somewhat. So those are the three objects we're going to be talking about this week: window, or document, window, and screen, and what can they do for us, right? By the way, when we get tested next week, document, window, and screen, right? Three objects that we have access to. Here's the window object. Underneath it, notice that screen and document normally appear underneath the window object as almost like part of the hierarchy. Also, some other ones we're going to be talking about are history, location, and navigator. That's interesting. With my navigator, actually, I can get all the details of my my coordinates in my geolocation. So where am I? Where do I exist? You know, where am I in the world? If I give permission to my browser, it will tell me my exact coordinates, my coordinates in longitude and latitude. So I can actually map them. I can know exactly where I am. That's pretty dangerous, eh? That means anybody, if they have enough smarts, can find out exactly your position in space on Earth. They'll know exactly where you are. Sorry? Oh, if you want to, even if you use TourGuard or one of those, doesn't matter. They'll still find your exact location because you're reporting your exact location from your computer. Has nothing to do with your proxy. Yeah. I'll show you this later on. We'll do TourGuard and all that stuff and everything else, and you'll still show me the same position. So it's not going to change anything. Change your IP address, but now your location, because you've given the browser access to your location. You have to agree. You have to say, do I agree to give the browser my access? Once you say yes, it's done. The browser has access to your location, right? And it's going to cache it. All right? So be careful about that. So that's one thing. Again, so document represents the web page, right? And the JavaScript represents each element by its own object. All right? So when I connect with each element by using document.getElementById, as an example, I'm referencing an element that's on the page through the document object. GetElementById is a method function that's built into the document object. It's built in. I don't have to install any new things. I don't have to go and use Bower to install document, right? It's built into JavaScript. You have all the information here. Okay, let's take a look. This is an example of a document we've seen before, and here's a really cool example of a document tree. All right, so this is the DOM, document object model tree. Notice that the very top node is the document node, right? Underneath that is HTML, and then inside there's head and body. Inside head, there's meta tags and title tags. Inside the body, there's a header, an article, some other stuff that's inside of here. right? You can see that this is a very typical hierarchy, right, for how your document's laid out. I can traverse the DOM both with CSS, right, and with JavaScript. Those are the two ways we can traverse the DOM, up and down the tree, right? I have more power with JavaScript, but it doesn't mean that I can't do everything with CSS. And there's a lot I can do with CSS now. CSS3 gives me a lot of stuff that I can do without using one piece of JavaScript whatsoever, right? Remember we talked about progressive enhancement. Structure first, then CSS, then JavaScript. And there's times and places where we don't want to use JavaScript at all. All right. Each item in the node or in the tree is considered a node. This is really, really important to know. And here's some common ways we can access elements on the tree, right? One, get element by ID. We've already done this lots of times, right? And there's some new ones. Get elements, plural, by class name. What this does is it gets, and you guys are going to hate me for this, an array of elements. An array of elements. So not just one element, but a bunch of them all together, right? Here it gets elements by name. So whatever the element is called, right? And here it gets elements by tag name. So for example, if I want to find a specific tag, like H1 tag, all the H1 tags in my document, I can look at them and I can change something for all the H1s in my document, as an example. This is really cool. Query selector all. It's really, really similar to what we do with jQuery, actually, right? jQuery is a short form of using a query selector, right? And what this allows me to do is select, the same way we do things with CSS. I can select an object or an element inside my document the exact same way with the exact same syntax. An example of this would be div space p, where p, I want to have all paragraph tags inside my, and all div tags. If I have a pattern that has a paragraph and a div tag, I want all of those paragraphs. That's what it means when I do my query selection. And remember, it says query select all, which creates an array of all the elements that match my query on the page. Again, we talked about write. This is bad. We don't write text on a page, right? This is bad. This will kill our document. So we don't want to use document.write. Typically, it's very bad. Okay, I think we've got a couple more minutes. I want to kind of go into this. A couple of other things. Document.body. Okay, this is very important. And someone asked me today, hey, I have a document, and I don't know. I keep always doing this. If this variable exists, then blah blah blah. But you can actually test it on title. So if the document.title is blah blah blah, then do this. If the document.title is blah blah blah, do this. Right? Let me give you an example of that in our code. Right? Because these are the other options here that we have. Let's check it out. So I'm going to do this now. I'm going to just get rid of this. This is just an example of what we can do. So I can say something like this. If document.title, right, document.title is equal to, and if I want to make it exactly equal to, I can do that too. But I want to say equal to home, which ours is, then what do I want to do? But maybe a better way to do that, if I have a lot of documents, instead of using if statements, is a switch statement, right? I want to switch on document title. How do I do that? So here's my switch statement. And I want to switch document.title. And then a switch statement looks like any other switch statement in any other language, C-influence language, I should say, where I do a case, home, and then I do a break statement. And inside, if case is home, then I want to say console.log. Just for now, for our testing purposes, you're at home, right? And what other cases would there be? Well, I have a couple of other ones, right? I have my about. Look at my document title for my about. My title is about me, right? So let's go and do that too. So about me would be the other one. So if my document title is about me, right? About, and I think I put it like this, capital M, capital A, capital M, then you're at the about me page, at the about me page, right? And again, you can use other things here to do that. By the way, let's test home. Make sure that my index.html looks the same. Home with a capital H is what I have to put it in, not home with a lowercase h. It's very important to match the case. Let's just check those two ones, right? Because I've got home and about me, right? And I want to be able to do everything that's inside of here right? I can call different functions depending on which page I'm on. Yeah, I could put it in if I want to, but I don't have to. It's not required. If I was to run it, let's just, so again, because I'm running it and I changed my code, I'm going to restart my server, right? And when I restart my server, I'm going to go to here, and here's my page, and refresh, right? Look what it says, you're at home. If I click About Me, hey, you're at the About Me page. So it detects which page I'm at by title. No other code. I can just read my title of my page, and depending on which page I'm at, different code. Guys and girls, this is the way we're going to do it from now on, to switch between code, because we're going to have lots of code, and every page is going to be different. I don't want to have errors on my page, so I'm going to read the title of my page, and if I can get the title, depending on what the title is, I'm going to kind of script my code in there. Right? Does that answer your question? That's the quick and nice way to do it. So this is just one example, because the document up until now we've been using document.getElement by ID. We don't know what we're talking about, but the document contains all access to everything, right? Everything that's inside the document. Like for example, here's some other stuff before we end. Location. The location of the current document, including its URL, right? Here's one, a referrer. Referrer is important, means if I come from another place, let's say for example, I started off at the home page and then I went to the About page. What's the referrer? The home page. The home page is the first page. Why do I need that? Because I can always go back to my home page. Okay, so I do a form and I want to say whatever page sent me here, send them back when I'm done, right? And the URL of the current document, whatever the URL is. So for example, I might have localhost 80 or whatever. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Because I'm running a server, I can run this, right? This is one other reason why we're doing the server today. So if I want to print, kind of print out the URL of the page, I can go console.log, right? Document.url. Here's my URL, and it's going to show you what that is in the console. Let's take a look at that. Now again, I changed my code. I'm going to stop it and redo my server. All right, good. Now I'm going to go back to my document and refresh. And you can see that that's the URL of my page, the whole URL. If I go back to home, it's going to change the URL to my index.html. This is really, really important to understand what URL I'm at, because I can also use my URL to do switching, right? So if I want to do code switching between different URLs, I can do that as well. Title seems to be the easiest one because you get a text title, right? But you can always read the URL and parse the URL depending on what the person is saying to process your pages, right? If you really wanted to. Okay, this is a good intro. Any questions around the three things? So we have document, right? Window and screen we're going to be using for this thing. And we're going to be using a bunch of different things. By Wednesday, I'm going to use the same tools, like I said, to create. I'm going to use Google API, if you guys want to follow me on this, right? To get a map, an interactive map, that tells me my exact location in space that's going to be shown on the page, right? Well, it's going to be using Google Maps. Okay, we're going to do that by using the DOM, and the screen. Questions? Joanne, you're afraid? You look afraid, Joanne. That's sick. I apologize. Did I freak you out? No? Anybody else on this side? You guys are all good? Excuse me. See you Tuesday or Wednesday. Wednesday. All right, remember that your lab 3 is due on Friday. All right? Thank you.